I'm Barb Kraft. I'm Director of Admissions. Thrilled to see all of you online. If you don't be camera shy, feel free to put on your video. We want to make this as interactive as possible. And just a few quick words about the program. We are one program with multiple locations. We have our Philadelphia cohort, our San Francisco cohort, and you all may have seen that recently we launched a global cohort. All three cohorts will start together the end of May with a 1-week orientation, first week of classes, and then there will be multiple crossovers throughout the 2 years that everyone is in the program. We get students from all over, and now with the global cohort from all over the globe, that new cohort is going to be 25% in person and 75% online, because we're looking to have people from far-reaching corners of the world be in that particular cohort. But if you are close to San Francisco or Philadelphia, and when I say close, I mean a flight away, then chances are you'll want to be in one of those cohorts. We do get people that travel great distances. We get students in both cohorts from Texas. We get people from Utah, Southern California, Mississippi, Florida, you name it. The more diverse the cohorts, the better as far as we're concerned in terms of industries, backgrounds, geography, and walks of life. We are the same MBA as our full-time MBA program in terms of the same number of credit hours, contact hours, and in many cases, the same faculty teaching in all of those cohorts. So in no way is it MBA light, and those on the line can attest to that, our alumni that we have with us tonight. With that, just last little plug, our first application deadline is next week, Wednesday, October 12th for round 1. And if you're not quite ready for that, no worries. That's why we have round 2, which is January the 18th. Taylor is on the line with me this evening. She's part of our admissions team. Thanks for being behind the scenes there, Taylor. She's going to help answer different chat questions that come in. Encourage you to post your question if you would like, if you have kind of a one-on-one question, or feel free to, raise a hand and jump in and ask people as well. Again, would love for this to be very interactive. So with that, I am going to ask our panel to introduce themselves, and I'm just going to kind of start in order of who jumped on first. Jeff, would you like to give a few words about where you're coming in from tonight, your branch of service, the type of work that you are currently doing, maybe what you were doing when you were in the program? That might be interesting to folks as well. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Barb. Well, it's nice to meet everybody. My name is Jeff Cho. I'm currently living in Southern California in the Anaheim Hills area. I did the whole program while located here in Southern California, so I was a commuter. I am an Army intelligence officer. I was a counterintelligence officer in the Army. I did that for 6 years active, and then a couple of years in the reserves as well. I'm a 2007 West Point grad. Today, when I was in the program, I was in consulting. I was a management consultant at Accenture. Since then, I've had a couple of roles. I actually made a switch while I was in the program. I was a senior program manager for a company called National Veterinary Associates at the time, and about 2.5 years ago, I joined the company I'm at today, which is the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, where I'm the vice president of field operations, where I own the P&L for about 177 centers across the United States. And so for me, it was very, I've had quite the journey since my time at WEMBA. I'm a class of 43 grad, which means I graduated 3 years ago from the program. And for me, it's one of the hardest times that I've probably had in my life, and that's including the Army. But at the same time, it was one of the most fulfilling and most rewarding as well. And I'm happy to answer questions around all of that, and very excited to talk to you guys here today. I even wore my Wharton veteran shirt for you guys here today, which I haven't pulled out in some time, but very excited to be here with you today.
Thanks, Jeff. And just to mention that when you hear people talk about, oh, I'm a 43 or I'm a 45, what they're referring to was Class 1 49 years ago coined themselves as Class 1, and everything has gone since then. So we are recruiting now for our 49th class. That'll be our class that starts in May. All right, Tricia, it's all yours.
All right, great meeting all of you. I'm a WIMBA 36. I graduated in 2012. I went through the program on the East Coast. I'm prior Navy. I spent about 9.5 years in the Navy as a naval aviator flying EP-3s. And when I was going through the program, I was actually still on active duty. So I was stationed at the Pentagon and doing the commute up from Washington, D.C. up to Philadelphia. And when I graduated, it coincided with the end of my aviation commitment and made the move into investment banking. And I'd say Wharton was critical for that, that enabled me to make that move successfully and get the job opportunities I did coming right off active duty. And I moved to San Francisco about 6 years ago, still in investment banking. Right now, I'm an executive director at Morgan Stanley, focused on mergers and acquisitions for tech companies.
Great, thank you. Dr. Colonel?
Hey guys. By the way, Jeff, I didn't know there was a Wharton Veterans t-shirt or sweatshirt. So Barbara, I
I'll
don't
get
know.
you on the list. They do an order every year.
Oh, do they, right? Okay. I need one or two of those. So thanks. I had no idea. Hi everybody. My name is Niran Angle. I'm on my civilian side, I'm a vascular surgeon. And on my military side, it's been 21 years now. I'm a colonel in the United States Air Force. I just took a command position at a squadron at the Aerospace Medical Squadron down at March Air Force Base about 7-8 months ago. So I go down there once a month, and rest of the time I'm on the phone, as you can well imagine. I joined Wharton because I'm sure we'll get into this, but I will tell you that I don't know if it was Jeff who said it or Tricia. I think it was Jeff. It kicked my ass. It was the most eye-opening experience, because when you're a surgeon, you're like, yeah, I'm smart, I know what I'm doing, and blah, 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 blah. I've never felt so stupid in my life as when I started that program. And the first 1 or 2 semesters, it was one of the most humbling experiences ever. And at the end of it, I can tell you it was without exaggeration a life-changing experience. It taught me things that I didn't even know that I didn't know. It taught me how to think analytically and critically, and it has been dramatic. I also am an inventor on the side of a surgical device that is being worked on by a startup company which I'm part of, and we're going to go to the FDA in the next year or so. But apart from that, even if that wasn't the case, I joined Wharton because I wanted to get a really good education in business. I didn't want to get a healthcare education because I think that's pretty limited. And I didn't have anybody interview me personally because I applied late, and Barbara, who is one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met, was kind enough to help me get through the application process and get me in. And it has been the most rewarding thing I've done in my entire professional life, and that includes medical school and residency and all the rest. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's sort of where I am. And I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm originally from Southern California, but currently for the last 6 years, I've been in the East Bay here in Danville, Walnut Creek. So when I went to class, I went to class just across the Bay Bridge into San Francisco, which is it's a beautiful campus, and it's just I've made a lot of great friends, and I don't have any friends, so that's a big thing to say. So it's been fun.
It is interesting how, a lot of times people at different stages in their career think, oh, I have all the friends I'm ever going to have. And then you get in a program like this and you're like, well, I have 100+ new friends. So you really are just choosing a coast. You heard we have people that graduated from the Philadelphia cohort and people who graduated from the San Francisco cohort. You're just really choosing a cohort or a coast for year one, because year two of the program is all electives. So if you would like, you can take electives on the opposite coast. You don't need to do that, but do know that's an option. I also love to give the plug that as a Wharton alum, and I'm just reminding you alums out there, that you can come back and audit classes, elective classes, at any time in your life at no charge. So Wharton really does embrace that lifelong learning policy. And with those elective classes, they do change and evolve with the times. Also, there's probably going to be more available than you'll ever have time to take. So know that you can always come back and take those. Very curious, and I know you touched upon this, Niren, for each of you, why an MBA at this stage in your career, and why Wharton?
Who do you want to start?
Feel free to jump in.
All right. Well, I'll start. I was in academic surgery for about 10 years as a professor of surgery at UC San Diego and UCLA before that, and then I went to private practice. And so it wasn't one of these things where, a lot of people doing MBAs are doing it because they want to move up in their organization or change positions or change fields. For me, it wasn't that. For me, it was I wanted to learn. I always enjoyed reading Wall Street Journal and Barron's and all this stuff because it was interesting to me, and Harvard Business Review and all that. And I always used to talk to my dad about, I want to do MBA. I want to do an MBA. God only knows what the hell I'm going to do with an MBA, but I want to do it because I want to learn. And he said, you don't need it. You read all the time. I said, no, I need a structured curriculum. I need to understand. And so I had a good knowledge of what I didn't know, so I wanted to learn it. I didn't know how. So I would invite all of you, by the way, as an aside, if you haven't seen Steve Jobs' commencement address at Stanford, please, 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 if it's one thing you do this week, find it on YouTube. It is one of the most watched and most remarkable addresses. And what he talks about is connecting the dots going backward, not going forward. So what he talks about is if you look at every step in his life, he did things just because he wanted to, not because he had a strategy about where he wanted to get to by doing it, whether it's dropping acid in India or taking calligraphy classes or whatever it is. And when you have to watch the address because it'll inspire you like no other. I've told hundreds of people about it, and I'm not exaggerating. But the reason I'm telling you that is because I didn't know what I wanted to do with an MBA. I just wanted to learn. And then I've always been of the mindset that once I learn, I will be cognizant of things that are out there, which I may not be cognizant of because I don't know, right? So I wanted to learn. So, but because of the fact that my job basically involves 24/7 being available, on call, operating, and the cost, which is considerable, Wharton is not cheap. It was never a serious consideration, but so I graduated in 2021, so a year ago. So about 3 years ago, when I decided I wanted to do it, we were sitting at a pizza place in Pleasanton, and I just was like, I really want to do this. And some sort of epiphany came over my family, and they said, yeah, you should do it. I'm like, what? And yeah, you should do it. So that's when I called Tran at the time. Remember, Barb? Tran, I forget her exact name.
Tran not there anymore?
Yeah, she was horrible. I mean, she was wonderful, but she was horrible. She told me it's very demanding. You're not going to have time. Your partners need to understand, and blah blah blah. And I said, just get me an audience with somebody, and that's when they connected me with Barbara, and Barbara was wonderful. We had a great conversation, and then I had to take the GMAT in like the executive assessment part in like 2.5 weeks, and I haven't taken a test in 30 years since I've been out of college or school, maybe 25 years. And so somehow I got through it. But the reason I applied to Wharton is because I didn't want to travel all over the country. The second reason is I didn't even apply to UCLA, USC, Berkeley. I only applied to Wharton because it is the premier program, particularly in finance and particularly on the quantitative side. And so if I'm going to do it, I wanted to do it right, and that's why I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get in, and it has been the most rewarding experience of my life, like I told you before. But that's the reason I wanted to get in. And I had this thing, my invention and my startup and all that stuff, but that's something, I have a CEO and he's doing it, but I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be more involved. But more than that, it wasn't a goal-oriented MBA process. It was, I want to learn, because once you learn, you really understand what kind of things are out there. And if you're just doing it just to get that next promotion or next thing, that's not wrong, but this is much bigger than that. And I can tell you, the Wharton experience, to me, talking to several people who've been to the Berkeley one and others, it's remarkable. And when you say Wharton, people go, "Oh, Wharton," and that's a nice, cool feeling. I hope that made sense.
And then for me, so I mentioned that I went through the program while I was still on active duty. And similar to Niran, when I thought about getting an MBA, for me, I didn't know when I would do it, but I always, my time in the Navy, felt that at some point I wanted to. I thought that for whatever career I was in, even if it was staying in the military or something else, it would just set me up well. So I always had my sights on it. Someday I'm going to get the MBA. And I started an MBA program when I was in DC at Georgetown. So I actually did 2 quarters there. It was close, I could go in the evening, and it worked out with my military schedule. But I was telling Barb this, about a couple of years before that, I had gone to a presentation on the WIMBA program in Seattle, and was just, that was like my premier, like one day I would want to do that. I just didn't know how I would fit it in. So I did end up starting at Georgetown. And I think as I went through that program, some of the things that just kept coming back to me that I remembered about the WIMBA program was, one was I felt like I was missing out on really getting to know my classmates, because it was an evening program. So, you're commuting in, commuting out. So you didn't really get to spend a lot of time with the people you're with. The diversity of the class wasn't there. It was, almost all DC, so a lot of government. So, I kept thinking about Wharton, and then finally decided to apply. And thankfully it worked out with my military schedule as well. And some of the key things for me on why Wharton, number one was it's the exact same curriculum as the full-time program. So it was really important to me that if I'm going to dedicate 2 years to this, I really want that same rigorous program. And then I also really liked that it's, you go every other weekend, you get to spend time in person with your classmates, and you really get to know them well during that time. And I'd say one of the biggest benefits now, 10 years out, and I'm actually going to my reunion coming up in November, 10-year reunion, is just the relationships that I've made. And looking at my career over the past 10 years since I graduated, there have been so many instances where my classmates have helped me out, where I've helped them out, and it's just created this very strong support system. And again, I think a large part of that is just the way the WIMBA program is able to, facilitate not only great education and great learning, but you've got great opportunities to get to know a very diverse set of students that'll become your friends, and then also, really help in your professional career as well.
Yeah, I have a very similar I think very similarly, to both of my colleagues here. Like I had the same reasons why I went. What I'll say, so I actually had a little bit of a gap though between my military service and when I started at Wharton. I actually started my civilian career in manufacturing, because it's close to the military. There's a lot of similarities to in the manufacturing ops world as there is to the military. So I did that for a few years, and then I wanted to expand my horizons and went into consulting. What I found was, through my time at Kimberly-Clark in manufacturing, and then while I was at Accenture, I frequently found myself having to look up like finance terms, right? Like I didn't know all of them. I hadn't been around it enough to really understand, really the important things that we were talking about in some of these conversations. I figured it out, and I learned through that process, but for me, it was really about like, I need to figure out how to bridge this gap if I want to continue to grow in my career. And, I think like we do in the military, we kind of figure out, okay, who does it the best, and go find out and find the answer. And so I found out Wharton does it the best in terms of finance. And and I had my heart set on it. And I don't think I've told Barb this already before. I don't think I deserved, based on my background and history, but graciously I had the opportunity to go to Wharton because all the things that Tricia mentioned, and I looked at a lot of the other schools. I looked at Ross, I looked at Haas. There's UCLA has a great executive program, and I think as I was comparing across all those things, all the things that Tricia said in terms of the wanting to be a part of like a full-time program. What I'll also say is that like there's not a lot of schools out there for like executive programs that offer electives that Wharton does. And Wharton's one of those unique schools that offers the electives. And that was a big draw to me as well, because I didn't want to have a set, like my second year, I wanted options. And so that was important to me. Yeah, I mean, just look, I'll tell you, it paid off for me. I have had the current job I'm in now actually was an introduction by a Wharton classmate of mine, and just really grateful for this. Is kind of one of my dream jobs, as in the civilian world. So it has definitely paid its dividends, for me in the investment that I put it to the 2 years in. And really, I call it an investment because it was an investment away from my family in a lot of cases. And, during that time, it was an investment away from my work, to be honest, because you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of that as well. But it was truly an amazing experience. I think just the classmate piece and just the experience, the learning piece. I learned all my finance and more. I actually had not intended to minor in it. I ended up one class short, but it was really because that's why I went to the school. I wanted to take all these classes, and actually my favorite class in the whole time that I was there was probably my international finance class. And it's when I'm practicing it in some cases. It's one of the things that keeps me interested in actually reading the Wall Street Journal all the time. And I didn't have an interest in it before. So it's really kind of shaped who I am today. So, yeah.
Great. And you can specialize or major if you would like. You don't need to. I find some people just want to take all the classes that they're weakest in to round themselves out. Other people are, similar to what Nir was saying, take things of interest, and sometimes that leads to a major that they didn't expect. But do know that you have lots of options, and even if you have a highly unique specialized interest, you could possibly do an independent study. So to Jeff's point, there is a lot of opportunity and flexibility with the curriculum.
Hey Barb,
So
if I could
yeah.
jump in, one thing I'd like to mention is when Barb said, you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to meet the application deadline and so on, I had to take the GMAT and I had to take the EA, and the quantitative part I did okay on, but I didn't do sterling on, right? And so I went through, and ironically, I'll tell you, the quality of the instructors and the teachers, and it will kick your ass, but in a good way. I was up till 10, 11 o'clock almost every night doing homework or reading, because it comes at you like a fire hose. And the reason is that it's the same amount of contact hours as a full-time MBA. And that's what's beautiful about it, that you're not getting a short shrift on it. But I ended up with majors in finance and in business analytics, which are two of the most quantitative majors that can be, which is ironic because I almost didn't make it into Wharton because of my marginal score on the quant part on the EA. So that's a reflection of the instructors of the program, and how hospitable it is. If you want to learn, it's there. It's all there for you, and those teachers are amazing. I can name them, and I think Jeff and Tricia would probably recognize many of the names. They've been there for a while, and the beautiful thing is they're not just academicians. They live in the real world, and so they can marry the two and show you what the reality is.
Yeah. And those standardized test scores are just one piece of the application. Like our job as an admissions committee is to really try to determine, does that person have what it takes to be successful in the program, the motivation, the determination. And I know that veterans have that. These folks on the line know that I have a special place in my heart for veterans. My father was a Marine, so I know the discipline that you all have. And with that, I also know that you bring a unique perspective to the class and to your relationships with your classmates. Could any of you maybe comment on that? Like, what kind of a special magic do veterans bring to the program?
I could start. I'll tell you, like, because I am not academic. I've never studied very well. I mean, starting from high school, I was never very good at it. I think the thing that I brought to the table though was I knew how to organize a team, and I knew how to get people aligned around the projects that we need to do. And immediately that was my value to like my study team, for instance, right? And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, they carried me through a multitude of classes. But it was like I think that's the thing that we bring to the table in a lot of cases is we may not be necessarily the expert in the room, and we're not going to be with the military background. Like, I mean, we're not always going to be the expert in the room, but what we can do is bring common sense. We bring like organization, project management. We bring the leadership that a lot of these folks are craving and want in a structured way. And I think that just, I mean, that's, of course, that's not just at Wharton, but that's in business as well. But, you know, it even showed up in Wharton for me, like, and it was a way for me to at least provide some value when I was not the one that was the expert in finance, because I had those in my study group, and I had the technologists in my study group that were great at, you know, the technology piece. And for me, it was really about, okay, hey, like, you need to show up and let's make sure that we do these projects on time, do the reading, and make sure, you know, and holding people accountable, and those things that we take for granted a lot of times, was my value to the team. And I think if you ask my teammates, I think I also brought a lot when we got to the operations section. I think that's where I excelled, you know, having that background, the leadership, the operations, and really being able to communicate about that topic really effectively, was probably another place where we, you know, where I provided value to the team and to my classmates as well.
And I'll add to that in the classroom, it's very, there's a lot of dialogue. So it's not just the professors teaching at you, that's very interactive. And I think, you know, because the class is so diverse, including veterans, there's a handful of other veterans in my cohort, that we could just offer a different perspective on things that were relevant, you know, even coming just from our military background, that were very relevant to the business world, be it managing teams, operations, how we think about things. That I think was unique. And that's just combined with Wharton does a very good job of just bringing a very diverse class together. So I found I was learning a lot also from others that were in, you know, the medical field, business field as well, nonprofit. And again, since the classroom is a lot of dialogue goes on, there's a lot of learning that you get from your classmates.
Thank you. I see that Neil popped in. Hi, Neil. I'm glad you were able to join us. I know you had some conflict, but thanks for jumping in. Would you like to introduce yourself and, you know, share where you're zooming in from today, you know, your year and what you're doing presently as a career?
Yeah. Sorry, I had, like I said, I had a work call, but I'm joining you from Arlington, Virginia. I just started with WEMBA in May, so I'm a WEMBA 48 and graduated in 2024. And so I'm currently attending the Philly campus. I have a unique perspective in that I applied to the full-time program. That was my initial plan. Decided to make the switch to WEMBA last year, and now joined the WEMBA program. Fantastic choice. Like, I do not regret it one bit. This is exactly where I wanted to be for a few different reasons. And so, Barb, I'll talk through that a little bit, because I struggled with that and thought through that for a long time. So for me, doing the executive program allowed me to, because I'm still an active duty Marine, allowed me to both work full-time and go to school. And so I am transitioning out of the Marines in about 3 months, and the opportunity to build credible, real work experience to go out into industry and say, I'm looking for a full-time job, as opposed to an internship. And I'm a mid-career transition as opposed to I'm an MBA with military experience. That means that I'm already coming in the hiring process at a much higher level than someone who's just an MBA grad, regardless of how much experience in the military you've had. So for me, this is absolutely the right decision. And so I would just encourage everyone to consider like why you're doing that, and happy to talk through that with anyone as well.
And before you jumped in, we were just talking about the impact that veterans make on their classmates. And I think Niran, you were gonna say something. So shall we go back to you?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is I think what was said earlier is absolutely true, which is that we bring the sense of discipline and focus and lack of softness, to say a better, to put it differently. All these things we bring to the fore. And it's a mutual thing. People welcome that because they look at us as somebody, civilian life, military life will teach you something civilian life will never teach you. It doesn't matter what you've done, how accomplished you are, it is completely different. And it's a great thing. And they almost universally admire that. They're thirsty to learn more about that. And it informs how we think about things, how we approach things, which might be different from what they may do, and it's a really nice meeting of the minds. The other thing that happens, not related to the military, is that, like, for instance, the networking part is huge. So Wharton has one of the most impressive networks there is, and like with any business school, if you get your MBA from a place that, you get an MBA because you turn in 17 box tops from a Cracker Jack box, it's different than when you join a really seasoned program, and something coming out of Wharton is significant. We've had a cross-pollination of, I can think, probably about 15 people just in my circle who have invested in each other's companies and projects and so on, and given advice, given suggestions, and actually been involved in product development, company startups, all these kind of things, which is great. And that leads to, whether that leads to friendships or friendships lead to that, it's sort of a circular argument, but it's one of the most gratifying things we have. And a couple of years ago, I had a Christmas party at my house, and we've done it since then. We celebrated graduation, and then a couple of guys came and we played guitar, and that led to discussion, that led to investments in each other's products and companies. So it's really beautiful, and it sounds almost sentimental, but it's real, and it leads to successes, it leads to insights, it leads to relationships, and it leads to success.
It is kind of incestuous like that.
Yeah, it is. It is. Hey, by the way, sorry to interrupt. Hey, Barb, I'm trying to send you a text. You're Paul Dorenwald from Wemba 45.
Yeah.
He has a friend who would like to join in, who's also a military vet, blah, blah, blah. So I sent him the link. So if you see somebody coming in, please, that's
Okay.
what it is.
That's Dr. Paul's friend. We'll
Yeah,
let him in.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
I'll totally echo that. I mean, again, I've been in the program for a semester and a half now, and myself and another veteran have already advised 2 people in private equity who are interested in, who are looking at defense companies on whether the technology that they're looking to fund is viable or not, using our experiences as kind of a backdrop. So it's been absolutely a resource outside of class as well. And I think anyone who's in the program who says like school is everything with this program, probably isn't doing it right. So
Yep.
I am studying, Barb. So
I know you are. I know you're working hard.
I should be studying right now, but this is more important, honestly.
Thank you. Before I throw out another question to the panel, would anyone here like to ask a question of them? Please feel free to jump in. And Taylor, I think we have some people in the waiting room, if you could let them in. Anyone?
I guess I'll ask a quick question, and I'll start with Semper Fi. Neil, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. To be candid, I just really started looking at Wharton within the last 10 days, and it just kind of the stars aligned when I spoke with one of the admissions ladies a couple days ago. And, she had mentioned this webinar was coming up. And one of the things I'm currently live in the Metro Detroit, Michigan area. And she has told me that there's the new kind of global cohort this year. So, and that's what I was leaning towards, but now in hearing, you guys talk, it sounds like at least I need to give it some more thought about, attending. It would be the Philadelphia campus in my situation. Like, how does that work? I mean, I currently work full-time. You guys, what do you do? Like typically fly out on like a Thursday night and like stay over and then wake up and go to class on Friday and then fly back Saturday? Or if somebody could just kind of explain that to me.
Where do you
I would
live?
appreciate it.
Where do you live?
Metro Detroit, Michigan,
Gotcha.
like Detroit, Michigan area.
I live
Yeah,
in-
Ron, Semper Fi. I'm from Ann Arbor, so I
Oh,
know
all
Detroit
right.
very well.
Yeah.
And happy to talk one-on-one further about everything. But yeah, so what that looks like for anyone who's not within, I guess, commuting distance by train or by car, you're probably looking to fly in the night prior. Class starts at 9 every Friday, full day of class. So from 9 until about 6:30 on Friday, and then class from 9 until 4 p.m. on Saturday. A lot of people fly out Saturday, and then kind of here and there, people fly out on Sunday as well. There is, I would say there's probably about a third of the Philly cohort who lives in Philly. So honestly, it's pretty easy to stay with someone in the area on the front end or back end. I've done that a few times to our train ride from DC. So I've come up the night before and just stayed with people, and that's not a big deal. There's a wide group of people, kind of a lot of Texans, and then some people kind of Colorado, Michigan. There's actually 2 people from Detroit, from Troy, who fly in every weekend as well. So there's a good bit of people who do that.
And just to clarify, we do post the calendars for each cohort are out on our website. So all the dates that you would need to be in class, regardless of the cohort that you enroll in. Now, you being kind of in the middle of the country, you could go either direction. You're really just choosing for year 1. The San Francisco cohort on Friday, it is by the way, both San Francisco and Philadelphia, those are residential programs. So those class weekends, we are really passionate about you being there, and we take care of everything for you on that weekend, from meals to lodging. Lodging on class nights, as Neil mentioned, if you come in the night before, you stay in after class, then you would kind of be on your own, or we could at least give you the Wharton discounted rate at the local hotel. In San Francisco, people are housed at La Meridian, which is just a few blocks from campus, and in Philadelphia, they use some of the Philadelphia hotels as well as SCC on campus. So San Francisco starts at 9:30. You'll get an extra half hour in San Francisco on those Fridays, and the Philly cohort starts at 9. Again, it's just that full day of class on Friday. And in both cohorts, people are coming in from all different locations and directions, whether they're training in, flying in, walking in, and then even our local people in Philadelphia or San Francisco, we do requires a tough word, but we don't break out that hotel for those local people. We really strongly encourage that they also set their busy personal and professional life aside and immerse themselves in those class weekends and stay at the hotel. So we do provide a private room at any one of the hotels, Philadelphia or San Francisco, so that people really are dedicating that class weekend. And to Neil's point, a very hard stop on Friday at 4, or excuse me, Saturday at 4 on both coasts, because our faculty are very respectful of the fact that people have flights to catch and so forth. So it really does end Saturday at 4, but you
Yeah.
are able to plan out your calendar. Mhm.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say to highlight, I live maybe 45 minutes away, so I could come home that evening. But almost all of us stayed at the Meridian, and the ability to kind of hang around together, and we had homework, and so we'd be in our study classrooms till 10, 11 at night before we went out drinking and things like that. That kind of camaraderie you cannot replicate by doing a distance learning thing. So if you have to, that's a different thing. You'll still get a tremendous amount of value in education. But if you can possibly arrange your schedule so you could be there in person for those 2 days, one night and 2 days, it's huge. It's dramatic.
And I do want to mention with the global cohort, there will be 5 different block weeks where that cohort will come together for an in-person experience. So 1 in Philadelphia, 1 in San Francisco. They're required to do 2 global modular courses, and then the global business week that all 3 cohorts do. And then also there will be 2 block weeks that will be offered someplace else in the world. That's not yet been determined, but that would be the global cohort. The San Francisco and Philadelphia cohorts, those are pretty consistent every other weekend for the 2 years. There are some breaks filled in there for holidays, also like a little short summer break. But to be honest, summer is the way that we sneak in some of those extra classroom hours to be able to award that full Wharton MBA.
I had a
Yeah,
classmate who flew in from Asia. Like, I mean, if you can do it, I mean, I highly recommend doing like the global program thing wasn't available when I was going through, but I mean, 50% of the experience of Wharton is going to be your classmates. I'm sure it's to your Aaron's point, I'm sure it's still a great program, but if you can swing it, I would totally try to do the in-person program.
Yep.
Any of you want to comment on how the program has impacted you? I know you have a little bit personally, professionally.
I mean, I will tell you just personally, I talked about how it was a difficult experience for me. I had my 3rd kid. My wife had our 3rd kid. I gotta correct myself. My wife had our 3rd kid while it was the weekend before my first finance midterm. And I thought that was going to break me, but it really, just the way my classmates rallied around me during that time really set the tone for me for the rest of the program. And because there is a strong recognition that we all had families or friends or people we love, like that we were leaving to come to the program every other weekend. And so you really develop a very strong bond. One of my closest friends from Wharton now is probably is a really good friend of my wife's now, like even more so than myself. And so you just start to build some of those really close relationships from a personal perspective. I mentioned earlier, like just from a professional experience, like I told you, I made a shift. I switched jobs in the middle of the program, which was again, very difficult, but really, support of my teammates and my classmates really helped shape as I was jumping into a new industry as well. But even in the last role that I have now, it was really through an introduction of a classmate of mine who I was randomly just trying to connect with because I was driving and wanted to call him and talk to him. He's like, hey, like I just heard about this opportunity from a friend of mine, and I'm going to connect you guys because I think it'd be good for the role. And and that's all she wrote. And I've been with the company now for the last 2.5 years in this role. And so, I think there was just, it was supposed to be just a very personal conversation. I was just checking in with a friend, turned out to have a really positive impact on my professional life as well. And I think if I look at my classmates, there's a lot of that happens, where a lot of that, people just thinking of each other and thinking of their network and their classmates at Wharton happens. And so for me, it's been an amazing experience. And again, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was really had a really impactful. It was really impactful for me, both in my professional and personal life.
Barbara, I wanted to ask a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So Pat McGill here, and Ron and Neil, another Marine to your right flank here. So a couple plus, but anyway, my question is, a lot of us are mid-career, much like Niren. I'm in a job and fairly happy with what I'm doing, but maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. And I just want something a little bit more, and that's what I'm looking for, perhaps in this experience. But that being said, always looking towards the future and opportunities. Jeff, you talked, the kind of just came through conversation, but I was wondering if any of the graduates could speak to potential opportunities that happen within the 2 years or at the end in terms of meeting different companies, networking with that Wharton network to perhaps find mutual fits and opportunities going forward.
I can give a few examples. Just with my class, when both in the program and my class, I'd say I think there were 3 businesses that were started among classmates. And these are people that started the program, and they didn't start the program with the intention of, hey, we're going to start a business together. But I think, the way the program's set up, where you have the opportunity to really get to know your classmates, and again, that's the in-person component, you just have a lot of time to share ideas. And so, one of them ended up selling their company a couple years after we graduated, did really well, and the others continue to do well. And then it's just been neat to see, some classmates hired other classmates during the 2 years that we were in the program. And then, even now that we're out of the program, just seeing the way people's careers have intersected has been really neat. And again, I think that's, it's made possible because your cohort is 100 people. Combined with the East Coast, both coasts, it's 200. But during the 2 years, you really have the opportunity to get to know these people well. And they become friends, and they become very good sources of just career advice. People end up working together. And it's really a place, if you take your career today, I mean, for me, I was still active duty, so I was surrounded by all military. But I think Wharton's unique because you get to go and you get to spend 2 years and really diversify your network and get to meet people that you otherwise probably wouldn't have intersected with. And those relationships become really valuable.
And we do have a director of career advancement for each coast. And they really work closely together, and they work closely with the cohorts to not just find them that next best job, but really help you learn how to manage your career for the rest of your life. I mean, they will help you find that next best job if that's what you're looking for, but they kind of take you on this career journey from self-discovery of really what are you good at? Where do you want to be? Strengths, weaknesses, kind of finding your superpowers, and then developing your brand or your pitch around that newfound self. And then really kind of an action phase and networking. They bring in Wharton alumni from different industries to talk about what it's like to work in those industries. And then they have a multitude of career services that you would think of, traditional ones from LinkedIn workshops to resume workshops to interviewing you and doing mock interviews and providing feedback to job search action teams to coaching. So there's a lot of different activities that do surround career. And last I knew from one of our career directors said that about 50%, they're tracking that about 50% of the class does make some kind of change within the 2 years that they're in the program, whether that's an internal pivot or internal promotion or an external role, and more than 90% within 2 years out. So people aren't doing a program like this and putting themselves through this to stay exactly the same. They're definitely on the move. And in some cases, they're finding, their dream job that they didn't realize existed, that maybe one of their classmates has, and they learn about that through getting to know them through the program. And they think, wow, or maybe they just had these electives and newfound interests that really help propel them in a different direction.
Hey,
So we
Patrick.
do have, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
I was going to say, we had a question come through the chat here about the largest impact on your professional experience and what class perhaps that you really had a big impact, and kind of along those lines, what was the best intellectual experience?
So if I could go back to Patrick, I think that's a very good question. And once again, I would refer you back to the Steve Jobs commencement address, because it basically speaks to what you're speaking of, is that we don't exactly know exactly where we want to get to, but I will tell you that just being around and learning and keeping an open mind, you might be surprised at the kind of opportunities that are available, or what you are interested in, which you didn't even know that you might be interested in, that open up those opportunities. So I think that's a critical aspect of doing a Wharton MBA, which is come in with a tabula rasa and just go in there and just learn, and then you will discover relationships, intellectual content, fields of interest that might suddenly go, maybe it's completely different from what you're doing, or there's a nexus there with what you're doing right now that you didn't realize was there before. So that shouldn't, if you don't have a particular destination you're trying to get to, I guess what I'm saying is that shouldn't dissuade you from doing it. It actually should stimulate you to do it, because you will find some place that you will be in 10 years that you would never have been had you not done this. To leap into the question that was asked to me, there's a professor named Ziv Catalan, who is one of the most intellectually fascinating people I've ever met in my life. It's applied mathematics and business analytics and so on. He will scramble your brain in a way that it makes you feel very stupid, but it's a beautiful thing. And that plus Chris Gacy, who does investment management, to me, those were some of the most intellectual classes I ever took, and those are all electives. And they changed completely how I view the world, how I view finance, how I view economy, and a lot of different things. So, short answer to that question. Maybe not.
Dad was ex-Israeli Army Special Forces.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the other guy is Gad Alion, who does the same thing in it's called the OIDD division, the Operation and Information Decision Making. It's a fascinating field, and I would invite you guys to leap into that and think about that as a major, because it applies to just about any field that you talk about. Brilliant people, very approachable people. I mean, these are guys that I could text at 10 p.m. On any given night, and they would answer. Gad would, Ziv would, a lot of people. So you develop a personal relationship with the professors that's unlike anything I've ever experienced.
So scramble, but stretch your brain, right?
I've had dinner with him, and I just keep, and then you're driving home, and that's what he meant. And yeah, it's a beautiful feeling.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Gad. I was consulting at the time when I took his class. He literally, his operations course on and there's a piece of his operations course where he goes through kind of like, how do you think about operational efficiency in a call center. What was interesting, I was on a project at that time doing exactly that, trying to solve that problem for this company about like, how do I set up the right structure and the right processes to maximize the efficiency of a call center. And so you think about like, how do you, like, you want to talk about like real world experience, like the epitome of like the executive MBA program. Like for me, it was in those like 2 months that I was in his class, really just, I was literally going from work and going to class, taking what I was learning from class, going back to work the very next week, applying it. coming back to class, asking Gad the same questions about how do I think about this program? And it was really, I mean, it's really, and now, you know, I consider myself like an operations guy, right? Where I feel like that's where my strength is. And Gad was able to open up my eyes using, you know, just using models in a way that I've never used it before. And it was really an amazing experience for me. I think the thing that was the most intellectual for me, I think it would be, I didn't realize how much I appreciated international finance till I took the international finance class, and going to Argentina as part of the global trip. Like one of the unique things was I got to go right as the Argentinian peso was crashing, if you guys remember from a few years ago, and had the experience of being there while that was happening and applying just all the lessons that I had learned in that experience. It was intellectual for me. Like, I mean, truly, like it was taking theory and watching it happen in real life and talking to the ministers of finance that were making the decisions in real time. Was a really cool experience for me, and probably the most intellectual part of my experience there.
And aside from being an amazing professor, Gad is one of those faculty that runs with students on Saturday mornings before class, which I think is really nice. Trisha, a class in your mind that had the greatest impact?
I think I'd say two. Negotiations was a great one, because I think that that's something that's just valuable in your professional life and also your personal life. And again, top-notch professors teaching that. And that's definitely one that I would love to come back and take again. And then communications as well. Again, that's a skill that in your personal and professional life. So I feel like those were two that were just very applicable no matter what career you go into, that just are super helpful. So it's a good combination of classes like that, and then, you know, really rigorous finance, accounting, investment type classes.
I'm taking notes on all your guys' recommendations because we're about to put our preferences in. The core set of classes, which none of them talked about, because I don't think they're the highlight of the program. But I mean, we had microeconomics and accounting and management in the first semester, and I had, you know, not really using accounting in the military at all, and not really using microeconomics in any way, shape, or form, really like stretches your brain, and it's just thinking in a different way. And I've honestly learned as much from my classmates about these subjects as I have from the professors in the classes themselves. And so it's a totally complementary environment where your learning is just supercharged by the professors, the classes, the classmates, and then at work, like Jeff said, applying things that you're learning right out the gate. So it's a overall, I mean, it's just an awesome experience.
I still think about Kenton Smetter's like auction, that discussion. Like, I will never forget that. Like, I think every class has something like that where I still think about things from that class as I hear about it, I experience it. I mean, I literally just pulled all my books back out because I kept finding myself asking myself, I need to remember what I was learning because I want to apply it to something I'm doing today. I have so many of those moments. Like Kent Smetters is like auction stuff comes up a lot, and I don't know. There's a lot of value to it too.
I think Ken Smetters is worth $210,000 all on his own.
He is. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, the professors are world class, and I didn't truly connect what that meant until I actually sat in the classes and listened to them. Like, oh yeah, when I was advising George Bush, and this is what happened, and then this is how it applies to microeconomics, and just all of that experience that they bring is amazing.
So we're at the hour already. I can't believe it. Any parting words of advice to the audience? Just shout it out.
I guess my advice is just when you think about the investment too, you really have to think about it as more than just the 2 years you're there, because there's so much value you get out of the program after and continuing on. So really, think about that when you're thinking about investing in it.
In the application process, do what they tell you to do. They're not going to lead you astray. I think that's, Barb and her team does a great job of guiding you to because, this is not something that you're doing all the time. And I think I would just, like we talked about it earlier, but I'd recommend doing it in person. Like I'm like really excited about going back to San Francisco this weekend to go see, for the reunion and go seeing some of my classmates again. And I don't think I have that even with my undergrad. And I don't even think I feel that way with like my friends, my lifelong friends, but I'm just really excited to see them. And I think that's all just a testament to how important that in-person model really is. I'd really encourage you to do it if you can.
Yeah, happy. You've got my email there in the chat. Happy to talk to anyone about the application process. And yeah, like Jeff said, just follow what's in the application. You'll be good. Thanks for the time.
And if you have any particular questions about your candidacy, don't hesitate to schedule a chat with a member of our admissions team. There's a link out there on our website. Also, we have more events coming up. In fact, we have an event tomorrow on military benefits that is going to be run by the person in our financial aid office who is the real expert in that particular area. So if you have the time, jump into that. We are a yellow ribbon matching school. So if you qualify for full GI yellow ribbon, it pays for a good portion of the program. And I want to just thank you all very much for your service and for joining us tonight, and wish you the best. Thank you to the panel. And you can find us all on LinkedIn. Please stay in touch. Good night, everyone.